the engineer who destroyed the bridge alone. One man, one bridge, and a decision that would change the course of World War II. Most people ran when the Germans invaded Belgium. Albert Dister did the opposite. May 1940. The German army is tearing through Europe like a hurricane. Belgium has hours, maybe days, before it falls completely. And there's this one bridge. The Vilvoorde Iron Bridge. It's not just any bridge. It's the main route into Brussels. If the Germans get across it, the capital falls. Simple as that. But destroying it, that's where things get complicated. Because someone has to stay behind to do it. Let me paint you a picture of what Belgium looked like in May 1940. The German Blitzkrieg had just smashed through the supposedly impenetrable Ardennes forest. Everyone thought those dense woods would slow them down. They were wrong. German tanks rolled through like it was nothing. The Belgian army was in chaos. Refugees were flooding the roads. Entire towns were evacuating. And the government was scrambling to figure out what to do next. Now bridges. In war, bridges are everything. They're how armies move. They're how supplies get transported. They're how tanks roll forward. And in Belgium, there was one bridge that mattered more than almost any other. The Vilvoorde Iron Bridge. This thing was massive. Built in the 1800s, solid iron construction, spanning the Brussels-Charleroi Canal just north of Brussels. And it carried the main railway line that connected Brussels to the rest of northern Belgium. The Belgian military command understood something crucial. If they could blow this bridge, they could buy time. Maybe a day, maybe two. Enough time for Belgian and French forces to set up defensive positions. Enough time for civilians to evacuate. Enough time to organize some kind of resistance. Without that bridge, German supply lines would be disrupted. Their advance would slow down. Not stop, but slow down. And in war, every hour counts. But here's the problem. To blow up a bridge properly, you can't just throw some dynamite on it and run away. This isn't a movie. These iron structures are built to last. You need to place charges in exactly the right spots. You need to calculate the amount of explosives. You need to wire everything together. And most importantly, you need to time it perfectly. Blow it too early and your own forces can't retreat across it. Blow it too late and the Germans capture it intact. The Belgian engineers had set up the explosives days earlier. Everything was ready. The charges were placed. The wiring was done. All someone had to do was stay behind, wait for the exact right moment and push the button. But that's easier said than done. Because by May 18th, German forces were close. Really close. Anyone who stayed behind to blow that bridge was probably not coming back. The German advance was so fast that escape routes were closing by the hour. Roads were clogged with refugees. German Stukas were bombing anything that moved. And German reconnaissance units were racing ahead of the main force, trying to capture bridges before they could be destroyed. So the military needed a volunteer, someone who understood engineering, someone who could handle the explosives, someone brave enough to stay behind alone while everyone else retreated. And that's where Albert Dister comes in. Albert Dister wasn't a soldier. Let me make that clear right away. He was a civil engineer, 30-something years old, worked for the Belgian Railway Company. He understood bridges because he helped maintain them. He understood explosives because that was part of his job. But he wasn't military. He didn't have combat training. He wasn't some action hero. He was just a regular guy who happened to have the skills needed for this mission. When the call went out for volunteers, Dister stepped forward. Nobody forced him. Nobody ordered him. He volunteered. And when you think about what that means, it's kind of crazy. He knew the odds. He knew that staying behind probably meant capture or death. But he also knew that someone had to do it. That bridge had to come down. And if nobody else would do it, he would. The plan was simple on paper. Dister would stay at the bridge with the detonator. Belgian forces would retreat across it. Once the last troops were across, once the road was clear, he would blow it. Then he would try to escape on foot, making his way south to French lines. Simple, right? Except nothing in war is simple. May 18, 1940. The day it all went down, dawn broke over Vilvoorde and the situation was already falling apart. The retreat wasn't organized, it was chaos. Belgian units were streaming back in disarray. Some had their equipment, some didn't, some were in formation, most weren't, and the refugees, thousands of them, men, women, children, all trying to get south away from the advancing Germans, all trying to cross that bridge. Dister was stationed at the detonation point, a small shelter near the bridge. He had a clear view of the span. The plunger was ready. All the wires had been checked. Everything was set. All he had to do was wait for the signal. But the signal kept getting delayed, because troops were still crossing, because refugees were still crossing, because nobody wanted to be the one to say, "That's it, blow it now," when there might still be Belgian soldiers on the other side. Hours passed. Morning turned to afternoon, and then they started hearing it. The sound every Belgian soldier dreaded, the rumble of engines, German engines, tanks, trucks, motorcycles. The advance units were getting close. Some reports say they were less than 5 kilometers away, others say even closer. Either way, time was running out. The Belgian commander in charge of the retreat sent word to Dister. "Get ready. It's almost time." But still people kept crossing. A unit of Belgian cavalry, some artillery crews who'd abandoned their guns, more refugees. The flow of people never seemed to stop, and every minute they waited was another minute the Germans got closer. Now put yourself in Dister's position for a second. You're sitting there, alone, watching thousands of people stream past you. You know that any moment German scouts could appear on the northern horizon. You know that if they see the bridge is still standing, they'll race for it. You know that if they reach it before you blow it, your entire mission is a failure. But you also know that if you blow it too soon, you're killing Belgian soldiers and civilians who haven't made it across yet. That's the weight on his shoulders. Not just his own life, the lives of everyone still on that bridge. Around 3 p.m., the situation became critical. German motorcycle scouts had been spotted. They were doing reconnaissance, probing forward, looking for intact bridges. If they reported back that Vilvoorde was still standing, the main German force would push hard for it. The Belgian command made the call. No more waiting. The bridge had to go down now. They sent a runner to Dister with the final order: blow the bridge. The runner delivered the message, then immediately left, headed south to try to catch up with the retreating forces. And just like that, Dister was alone, completely alone, the last man at Vilvoorde. He did one final check of the detonator, made sure all the connections were solid, looked out at the bridge one more time. There were still a few stragglers crossing it, a handful of soldiers, maybe some civilians. He must have been hoping they'd make it across in time, but he couldn't wait anymore. The Germans were too close. This is the moment. Dister's hand is on the plunger. His heart is probably pounding. He's trying to see if there's anyone still on the bridge. The afternoon sun is glinting off the iron structure. Everything he's worked on, everything he's maintained as an engineer, he's about to destroy it with his own hands. He takes a breath and pushes down. The explosion is massive. Multiple charges detonate simultaneously across the bridge's critical structural points. The sound echoes across Vilvoorde like thunder. The iron framework twists, buckles, and collapses. Huge sections of the bridge fall into the canal below with enormous splashes. Debris flies through the air. Smoke and dust cloud everything. In less than 10 seconds, the Vilvoorde Iron Bridge goes from a solid structure to a twisted pile of wreckage half submerged in the canal. Dister did it. The bridge is down. The main route into Brussels from the north is cut. But now comes the hard part: getting out alive. Remember, he's completely alone. His own forces are gone. They retreated south hours ago. The Germans are approaching from the north, and he's on foot in the middle of a war zone with no clear escape route. He doesn't have a vehicle. He doesn't have a radio. He has whatever he's carrying and his knowledge of the local area. That's it. According to the records, Dister immediately left his position after the detonation. He headed south, trying to parallel the canal. His goal was to reach French lines which were supposedly being set up somewhere south of Brussels. But the situation on the ground was fluid. Nobody really knew where the lines were. Units were scattered. Communications were broken. It was every man for himself. He moved through the chaos of the retreat, roads clogged with refugees, abandoned military equipment everywhere, burned-out vehicles. The sky was dangerous too. German planes were strafing roads and bombing anything that looked military. He had to stick to cover, move through fields and forests, avoid the main roads, because on the main roads you were a target. What's remarkable is that Dister understood something that saved his life. He didn't try to be a hero. He didn't try to join up with scattered Belgian units and keep fighting. He knew his mission was done. The bridge was destroyed. His job now was simple survival: get to friendly lines, report what he'd done, and live to see another day. The journey south was brutal. It took him days. Some accounts say 3 days, others say longer. He had to navigate through German-occupied territory, had to avoid German patrols, had to scrounge for food and water, sleep in ditches and barns. Every sound could be a German patrol. Every vehicle could be enemy troops. The entire region was in chaos, and he was right in the middle of it. But somehow, someway, Albert Dister made it. He crossed into French-held territory. He identified himself to French forces, told them what he'd done, and finally, after days of running and hiding, he was safe. He'd completed his mission and survived, against all odds. So what happened to that bridge? The destruction of the Vilvoorde Iron Bridge actually did what it was supposed to do. It delayed the German advance into Brussels by about 18 hours. Now, 18 hours doesn't sound like much, but in the context of the 1940 campaign, it mattered. It gave Belgian forces time to fall back to more defensible positions. It gave French units time to move up. It gave thousands of civilians time to evacuate. And it forced the Germans to find alternate routes, which slowed their logistics. Did it change the outcome of the Battle of Belgium? Belgium still fell. The Germans still took Brussels. The Allied forces still had to evacuate from Dunkirk. But Dister's action was part of a larger strategy of delay and disruption. Every bridge blown, every road blocked, every hour delayed meant more Allied soldiers got away, more civilians escaped, more time to prepare defenses. As for Albert Dister himself, he became a symbol of Belgian resistance. After the war, he was recognized for his bravery. The Belgian government awarded him honors. His story was taught in schools because what he did embodied something important. He wasn't a professional soldier. He was a civilian engineer who saw what needed to be done and did it, even though it meant putting his life on the line, even though nobody would have blamed him for refusing. He volunteered. Think about the choice he made. He could have left with everyone else. Nobody would have judged him. The retreat was in full chaos. He could have just said, "This isn't my job, I'm a civilian," and disappeared into the crowds heading south. But he didn't. He stayed. He waited. He completed the mission. And then he fought his way back through enemy territory to survive. There's something about stories like this that hits different than the big famous battles. We all know about D-Day and Stalingrad and the Battle of Britain. Those are the huge moments with thousands of soldiers and massive consequences. But World War II was also made up of thousands of small moments like this. Individual people making individual choices that added up to something bigger. An engineer staying behind to blow a bridge. A resistance fighter passing information. A civilian hiding refugees in their basement. All of these small acts of courage added together created resistance against the Nazi war machine. The Vilvoorde Bridge was eventually rebuilt after the war. Modern trains cross that spot today. People drive over the canal, go about their daily lives. Most of them probably don't know the story. Don't know that in May 1940, a man named Albert Dister stood alone at that spot and made a choice that saved lives. That's how history works sometimes. The big monuments and famous names get remembered, but the individual acts of courage, the personal sacrifices, those often fade away. But not this one, because Dister's story survived. It got written down, it got remembered, and now you know it too. You know that when Belgium was falling, when everything seemed lost, when the Germans were rolling through Europe like nothing could stop them, one engineer stayed behind and did his job. Not because he had to, because he chose to. That's the real lesson here. Not that one man can change history, but that individual choices matter. That courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. Dister was probably terrified, probably wanted to run, but he stayed. He pushed that plunger. He destroyed that bridge. And then he ran like hell and somehow made it out alive. If you want more untold World War II stories like this one, hit subscribe.